Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the Manchester-based band, The Man from Delmonte, because I recently spoke to their bass player, Sheila Seal, very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Life of an indie band in the late 80s, very early 90s, but also the band are reforming to play some gigs in the UK this coming spring, February and April. It's going to be Manchester, London and various other locations, but go to their Facebook page and you'll find out more information. There's going to be CDs, merchandise and lots of other stuff. Anyway, after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, Sheila tells us about her early musical awakening. Over to you, Sheila.
Well, I don't know if anything actually changed everything, but I have three big sisters, and the one closest in age to me, the older one closest in age, was really into Joni Mitchell. And I think through her, I remember trying to play Blue, Joni Mitchell's Blue, on the piano when I was quite young and working it out and saying to my sister, is this as emotional as Joni, the way Joni plays it? You know, and just being desperate to emulate a little bit of Joni Mitchell. And she and Bob Dylan are probably the few people whose songs I know all the words to a few of their songs, because I'm not a word person. I'm terrible at remembering words. But so yeah, Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan, and so the sort of folky thing, and then later on not meeting in person, unfortunately, but Little Feat,
right,
and Steely Dan, and folks like that. But I do remember watching Top of the Pops. Again, it would have been the 70s with my dad, who was obviously quite a lot older than me. He was quite an old father, and listening to all those kind of glam things and sweet. And I remember the haircuts, you know. And I loved David Bowie actually as well. And I do remember that same sister going out to see David Bowie. We lived in Edinburgh at the time, with Ziggy Stardust painted across her face. You know, the Flash painted across her face. So I think she was a big influence, and she's actually she's of the four of it, the four girls, so we all play and we're all musical. She's the one that's actually made a living at it, and she's a Clarsach, Scottish harp player, and has, you know, everybody in Scotland in the folky world knows my sister. Who's called Mary McMaster.
What was her name?
Mary McMaster, and her band is the Poozies.
Oh, God, of course. I know the Poozies. Oh, blimey.
Yeah, and you know what? When they started the Poozies, she said to me, you can be the bass player. And that was just at the end of Delmonte's, well, before the end, when I got pregnant with my daughter. And that was after that, the Delmontes fell apart, and I never got to join the Poozies.
Blimey, God, that could have been a double whammy of musical excitement, actually. God, that's so quite a musical family then. So were your parents quite hip and happening and slightly not bohemian, but did they kind of encourage?
They encouraged the music. They didn't encourage the alternative kind of music. I mean, my parents both loved music, and my mum sang in choirs and stuff like that, but they'd never had the opportunity in their childhoods to be taught. And they made sure that we all learned. And I was the one that took the classical side of it on. I was quite good at classical piano back in the day. And my dad would sit, I can remember him every day, he would sit and listen to me practice and play. And I'd just play through reams of music. And I'd play the first page, and then I'd get bored, and I'd get a different bit and play the first page. So I got very good at sight reading. But he would say, can you not play anything all the way through? I could if I was interested enough, but that's quite typical of me, really, that I start and then I stop, and then I'll start something else and I'll stop. So the fact that I was showing you a minute ago one mitten that I've made for my grandchild, she has two hands. I've only done one mitten, so that's very typical. I will do the other one when I can find the wool.
Well, yes, and the time and the excitement, yes. Yeah. Well, that's kind of interesting because, yes, Joni Mitchell, it was a bit more in the 80s. I suddenly kind of I discovered her. I suppose at the time I was just very curious, and then came across these various books about classic albums, and the Joni Mitchell, Blue and Court and Spark were up there with
Mhm.
Van Morrison's Moondance and Astral Weeks, and thinking, oh yes, I must
Yeah.
try and get these from the library, and being kind of initially, I must admit, found it a little bit sort of difficult. But then I think I listened to Miles of Isles and became kind of quite obsessed, and then got the lyrics much more
Right.
about, because I grew up also, the other band that I absolutely loved was the Carpenters. I just found
Oh,
that
yeah.
the lyrical quality of the Carpenters has always resonated with my soul.
Yeah, yeah. But the sound as well. I think it's sound I love the sound of voices singing in harmony. And the Carpenters were magic at that, weren't they? They were
Yes.
just fantastic.
And lyrically, I just love them. I've often thought, if you like the Carpenters, you definitely would like Joy Division and the Smiths many decades later, because
Yes.
they're all very much sort of singing from the same kind of hymn sheet. Verses
Yeah.
1-83. Yes, there you go. So as you were sort of, what was your first album or single that you bought?
I think it was something like Cindy Goes to Hollywood or something. It was a kind of like crap girls little single. I don't remember.
Cindy Goes
Something
to
about
Hollywood. God, I'd never come across it.
No, it wouldn't be Hollywood. No, it was a kid's song. I mean, I suppose the first album that I remember that would be worth remembering was a Beatles compilation.
Right, either the red one or the blue one, wasn't it? Really, I think
That's right. I think it was the blue one actually, and I think I remember thinking, "Oh, we should have bought the red one."
Yes,
Yeah.
I can't remember which one was which. Really, did you? I mean, God, your sister going to see David Bowie was very cool. So, what was your first gig you went to?
Ooh, Jeff Beck, I think. Beck Bogart and the Peachy, I think.
Blimey!
Playing in Edinburgh
Oh,
with one of my friends. Yeah,
that's
I think
very
it was.
cool, isn't it? Seeing Jeff Beck live as well during that
Yeah,
period. So
yeah.
then,
And sorry, I remember going to see Don't Go Breaking My Heart, Kiki D
yes,
in Edinburgh because my sister, a different sister, was singing backing vocals with her husband's band. So we got to go backstage, and Elton John was. I mean, I never met him, but he came on the stage to sing that song. So I have seen Elton John play one song.
God, that's again. I didn't realize she did that much touring. Really, I didn't. But then, I haven't followed her work, though I expect
No,
Cherry Red Records has been putting out all her compilations and stuff alongside
yeah.
people like. So when you saw things like Sheila Easton, there was that program, wasn't it, that was done by Esther Ransom about, the big time. Did you watch that and think, God, I need to be into the music world. This is it. She's from
No,
Scotland.
yes, she is. I do remember her. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think there was ever a part of me that thought, this is what I want to do. Apart from I loved the sound of a bass. So after studying classical piano, and then stopping playing classical piano, and just thinking, I love a bass. I want to play bass. But it took me a while to do that. But I never had a kind of like, yeah, I really want to be in front of an audience. This is I'm desperate to perform. I want to be in a band. It was more like it just kind of happened when it happened, which was quite late in my life.
Yes.
Really.
Did you? But did you see people like Susie Quattro, who was there in her
Yeah.
leathers playing bass, thinking
Yeah.
that's quite cool?
That's really cool. Yeah, she was very cool. And I loved
Yes.
Talking Heads as well. So Tina Weymouth as well. And so
Well,
there were women playing the bass because there were very few women in pop music unless they were the singers.
all Pan's people.
Yes.
Quality
Yes.
dancing. Yes,
Yeah.
I know that is a bit of a mod. So when you got to 16, did you stay on and do A levels and then go on and do a degree?
Yeah, well, in Scotland it was different. In those days, it was hires. So I actually did my hires, left school at 16 or nearly 17, went to a college in Edinburgh that was starting a new music course. It's called Napier College. And it was a really good course. It was a 2-year, I think it was an HND, but I only did the first year for some reason I've never quite been able to remember. And then I left that college, which was fantastic with a great course. And I went to what is now the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, which was the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. And I did 4 years studying to play the piano.
Yes.
and being an accompanist. I was a piano accompanist, so doing lots of interesting things actually with early music and harpsichords and the contemporary music group. But I kept studying because I didn't know what else to do, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, well, I don't want to teach, and I'm not good enough to perform full time, and I don't really want to. So what am I going to do? So, advice to young people: think about what you might do and think about what your passion is and go for it, rather than thinking, oh, I should be doing this or blah, blah,
Yes, this is true. God, that sounds like you were very focused on, I think, as musicians go. I think there was Helen O'Hara who became part of Dexy's Midnight Runners. I think she
Right.
also did a study in a similar world as you and was almost
Right.
going to be part of an orchestra, but then got the call and became part of Dexy. So there aren't many people I've interviewed who've had your kind of musical depth and yes,
Yeah.
quality.
Well, I think the thing is, if you learn piano, you learn a lot about harmony, and you have obviously you're dexterous because you need to be. But knowing about harmony and understanding all that, and because I was a good sight reader as well, and I was taught very well about singing from sight, so I can sight sing, which is a different kind of skill, really. And then I think when I left, and I set up an art gallery when I'd come down to Manchester, did a postgrad at the RNCM, which is a very prestigious college, still very prestigious. Did very well, didn't work hard enough really. Then left and just faffed about for a while, but got involved in an art gallery setting up. And so because I had these dexterous fingers, I learned to touch type very quickly, which has been a very useful skill.
Yes, typing was quite the thing, wasn't it? How many words a minute could you do?
Useful.
So what was the Edinburgh years, and then when did you move to Manchester?
Well, the Edinburgh was when I was at school, and then I lived in Glasgow to study at what is now the Conservatoire.
Yes.
Moved to Manchester in 1981, and went to the RNCM for a year to do postgrad in performance. And then that was after that we set up a gallery, and I was working with an artist studio. My husband's an artist, so a lot of this came from his friends. To be honest, I remember thinking, oh, his friends are much more trendy than the people at music college. I think I'm going to hang out with them more.
Yes.
So I liked a lot of his friends, and some of them are still around, and it's really nice to be with them. And it was through the gallery and the art scene that I met Martin and Howard, and then eventually Mike.
Yes,
So that
because from the Manchester period of that sort of 80s, because I spoke to people, and various people had been musicians. A couple had been involved in the Manchester Arts Lab, and then apparently there sounded like some cooperative in Liverpool as well, and it was all very, socialist workers and political and stuff like that. Did your world sort of brush up against those kind of communities and groups?
Not in the political sense at all. I think we were involved in Manchester Artists Studio Association, which was one of the first, well, probably the first group, as far as I know, the first group studio. Because Manchester in those days, it was it wasn't what it's like now. I don't know. There wasn't much contemporary art on show, and there was nowhere for painters to work together. So that was the focus of that, was to have group studios. But it wasn't a political thing in memory, not at all. No, it was about art. It was about making art. And then I got involved in the gallery. There was a guy called John Lavelle who had a vision, amongst the others. He had a vision for starting a small contemporary gallery. And he sort of picked me to try and push that forward, because I wasn't a practicing artist. I was quite bright, and I had a good Scottish accent, which was quite helpful in getting things done somehow.
Yes. And was there a feeling, because during that, I mean, I think one of the reasons why there's so many indie bands from the 80s was there was a huge amount of unemployment at that stage, and there was a lot of people who I mean, it didn't feel like there was much of a career opportunity, I know, to paraphrase The Clash, and there was not much excitement, especially if you're left of centre during that period. And so going unemployed didn't seem a bad thing, and you didn't feel ashamed of it. And then there was the job
Not
seekers
at all.
allowance and enterprise allowance schemes, and you could do that,
Absolutely.
be a year on one of those things. If you had £1,000 in your account, which always seemed a bit boggling where there's £1,000, but no one questioned it. But
No.
and then sort of, so an awful lot of people went, oh gosh, and I don't have to do restart interviews and get an extra £10 or something, and you get your housing benefit and council tax paid, and suddenly voila, put a musician, and Thatcher loves you.
It's an extraordinary thing to think about that now. Of course, at the time, that's just what we did. We lived in a place with cheap rent, and I was on enterprise allowance, I think, twice as being in the band. It's like, this wasn't a real career, but it was amazing. I don't know how people do it now. I don't know how people study something like art or music and come out of it and just keep on practicing, because you've got such a lot of debt and rents are so high and everything is so hard now.
Yes,
I think.
and there's been, and I guess with the Manchester thing, there's been various books that have come out. He says, trying to remember which one I interviewed recently about a book he wrote about Manchester and some magazine that was around the Manchester scene, which, God, if only I'd organised this and had it there, it would have been just so much easier. I can't remember where it is. But yes, Manchester. Yeah, but there was also that estate, the Hume estate that everyone photographs now, and there seemed to be like an awful lot of bands, and there was a studio there, and they knocked walls down and made bigger studio, and there was a whole scene. So there was this whole. There did seem to be a rise of kind of interest in, and you know, like I said, there was an alternative publication, a What's On guide as well, which was, you know, kind of documenting.
Yeah.
So it did seem like that Manchester was having quite a moment. In that world.
Very much so. I think, was that City Life you were thinking about?
Yes, and Andy
Spinoza. Andy Spinoza.
Yes, God, for a starter of 10.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Jon Ronson wrote for that. I can't remember if he did or not. But various people I know, Phil Griffin used to write for that, and having been a director, a TV director at Granada, or a TV producer. Anyway, just names from the past. But City Life was fantastic, and there was such an alternative life going on in Manchester. It was coming into its own. Yeah.
Yes, and there was also, I mean, at that stage, and did you start to sort of pick up on that kind of music scene as well? Because obviously, I mean, Cherry Red Records have been, you know, brought out this 7 CD box collection of Manchester from like 76 to 80 something, and you thought, wow, 7 CDs. You know, you couldn't fill up 1 CD for Norwich, but 7 is quite special. So, and then you know, obviously you had some major players, and you must have had a bit of a rise in people doing art as well at that stage.
Yeah, I think there must have been. It's hard. I've got a really bad memory. I'm just, you know, you probably worked that out from other things, but remembering the chronology of things and who was there and what happened to them next. And there are various people who've gone on to be really successful. Some of the painters that were around at that time. Some went into academia and teaching, and some went on to sort of really have a bit of a career. I can think of a few. And musically, there was loads around. I can't remember any names, though. You know, it's just.
So with this gallery that you were doing with James Lavelle, how long did that last for?
The gallery is still in existence. It's extraordinary because we opened the gallery in 19. I'm just trying to think, because Rachel was born in 1990. It was started, I think, in 1984.
Wow.
That's a long time ago.
Only 41 years ago.
I know. And it was at the top of Liverpool Road in Castlefield. And then after I left, they had various people, and then they got a lottery funding to buy a building. So it's still in Castlefield area, but it's in a different building now, and it's secure. I mean, it's still going.
Fantastic.
The vision of the gallery was to bring what I would say contemporary artists and sculptors to Manchester and pair them with unrecognised local talent, or not necessarily always local, sometimes London or other places, but to put this sort of well-known person and this not well-known person together and try and create a bit of stuff. And we did show some extraordinary artists at that time. And we had, don't know if you are familiar with Anthony Caro, who was a sculptor.
Because we've got some at the Sainsbury's Centre. There's a few pieces by him.
He was our patron for a while, and he was a lovely, lovely man. And we used to do this crazy stuff like drive down to London in a Salford hire van and pick up from the big galleries on Cork Street, big commercial galleries. We'd pick up all this work. Like a bunch of young people from Manchester, load it into the back of a Salford hire van, drive it back to Manchester. Work by Anthony Caro, John Hoyland, Adrian Berg. I mean, these are all pretty famous. I mean, they're dead now, all of those guys, but pretty famous artists. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. What was the question?
Interesting. And did you, you know, that's a long time ago. Did you say you also created sort of artist studios for people, like a community of of spaces for people to rent cheaply that they could go and have that space and create a community for artists as well?
Yes, a community, a sort of association. I can remember sweeping the floor and building the walls and painting the walls and how cold it was in there. Yes. And that was on Granby Road in Manchester. And we used to go down to the old garret to drink after hours, you know.
As you do, yeah. Well, but I sort of have that vague memory of around Norwich, you know, these, creative community places that were converted, not churches, or there are a few churches and there was a few other places where, you know, people just set up and there was always somebody running a darkroom, you know, photographic workshop and then various people doing things. And it all seemed, and someone was always doing some sort of performance art, you know, 10-week workshop. And it was just kind of interesting that, you know, and I just wish it had all been documented a bit better, because it's all such a hazy memory of turning up to these places to some community arts group that somebody had got together.
I think it's incredible how some people have documented things. And there is actually a film of us at that time called The Art Mob that was put out by, I think it was a Granada TV thing. Can't remember.
I think I was watching something the other day which was quite interesting. Yes, I know.
I think that was made by Phil Griffin, and it's inside our house in Castlefield as well. My son is on it painting at his dad's easel, and then it goes to various different artist studios. The Art Mob. I think somebody's got the right. I think Ian Lee has managed to get the rights to put it out there.
Yes, The Art Mob, 1989, Manchester Arts documentary.
That's it. That's the one. It's a moment in time, that. Yeah.
Yes, I was watching that the other night and thinking, this is brilliant. You know, I wish people had documented all those little things, because it was very sort of, you know, there in the moment when there was a grant and some people with great visions, and before everyone fell out with each other and as they do.
We never fell out with each other in our band.
Oh, that is such good news. No, that's nice to hear that. A nice story there. So when did you get the bass guitar, by the way? When did this kind of appear?
That would have been about 1985 or into 86. Probably 85.
Yes.
Because my father died in 1985 and my mum gave us all a little bit of money. And I used some of mine to go to Johnny Roadhouse and buy this old Hofner Very Thin, which is a lovely bass. And I must have bought an amp as well. And that's when I got that. And then my son was born in 86, and we started the band in 86, really.
Yes.
As far as yeah.
And were you interested at this stage? I mean, you mentioned Little Feet, Feet Don't Fail Me, and Steely Dan, which was reeling in the years, the classic 70s, slightly yacht rock, and Joni Mitchell's confessional singer-songwriter. So did the 80s in Manchester, did indie pop start to appear and you start going to the Boardwalk and the international?
Boardwalk.
Yes.
The Boardwalk. Yeah. I remember going to the Boardwalk to see various people, but most of my strongest memory of the Boardwalk is actually playing there. But I do remember going to see the Indigo Girls at some point. They were great great band, and going to the International One to see Robert Cray.
Right.
But a lot of my musical influence, I'm kind of a little bit lazy about paying attention. And I'm a bit influenced by those around me who go, "Oh God, have you heard this? This is fantastic." And then I'll, pay more attention.
Well, Robert Cray, when he came along during that period, I mean, it was just picked up by everybody. And, I do remember certain demographics kind of buying people who probably had really been who were a little bit older, who were still slightly interested in music. So during that period, they would have bought Paul Simon's Graceland, probably a Tracy Chapman album. Robert Cray was there as well. Yes, Suzanne Vega. I do remember this slightly older group that I used to hang out with, who were slightly old hippies. They weren't going to get into the Smiths and the Chameleons and, extreme noise terror, but they were going to definitely be able to sort of go, "Oh, Robert Cray, we'll go and see him live," and Ted Hawkins.
I think for me, I do feel like I've got a really broad taste. That I really love early music, like really classical early music, William Byrd and stuff like that. And I really like all that stuff we've just been talking about. But I also quite like the Smiths. And we used to listen to The Clash quite a lot and all that sort of punk, and Graham Parker and the Rumour. I went to see him.
Yes. Classic.
So it's sort of big range of things that I like listening to.
So when you got the bass, did it sort of come quite easily? And what did you start playing along to?
I started with Tina Weymouth's
Psycho Killer.
Psycho Killer, absolutely. Psycho Killer. And then Dennis Edwards, that the one that is Rapper's Delight now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I love that. That's the same song. Or is that Dennis? No, Dennis Edwards is one with dum 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 bum bum ba bum 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 ba dum bum dum do bum. Something like that.
Well, I was obsessed with John Peel, so hearing those, I don't know, Grandmaster Flash, and so were you talking about that funk kind of period of like just yes and
I did like that. Although, sorry, I don't play in a funk manner at all. I've got a couple of friends who are bass players, and I say, "What do you think of this guitar?" And they'll go, and I'm like, "Ooh, I can't do that. That's not how I play."
there was a few jazz bass guitarists. Was it Stanley Clarke or somebody like that, who you wouldn't really sit there and listen to it, but it was you got the impression after 10 seconds or 20 seconds, it was very good, but kind of quite hard work, actually. It was like, yes, you're very clever and that's incredible, but sometimes you just want some solid groove, don't you?
Well, yeah, I've just bought a new guitar, actually, because all the ones I played in Delmonte's heyday were left in studios and then got robbed. So I didn't have a really good electric bass. I've got a semi-acoustic that was playing with a klezmer band. It was not really appropriate for Delmonte, so I've just bought myself a very nice Fender Precision, a second-hand Fender Precision. And in the doing of that, was chatting to a friend who's got about 16 bass guitars about what kind of sound it is that you want. And what you just said is exactly what I like. It's the grounding. It's the accompaniment, but more than the accompaniment, that's what I like to hear.
Yes. I know there's some those iconic bass lines that you kind of can never forget, but yes, they hold the whole song together. So then how does the band start then? Were you part of a slightly hip or arty scene then? Did you all sort of bump into each other like a Woody Allen film, but in Manchester, looking at a private gallery going, "God, this is so beautiful, the torture of this."
We did kind of through the art scene, knew other artists, and I don't remember how I'd met Martin, but he was around and I was around, and he was a guitar player and I wanted to play bass. And then I remember talking in the pub to my friend Rachel, and I said, we want to start a band, we need a drummer. And she said, "Oh, Howard's a drummer." That was her blog. And I was saying this to Howard recently, that Rachel had said that, and he laughed and he said, "I wasn't a drummer, I had a kit, but I wasn't a drummer, but now he's a drummer."
Right.
I mean, he was a drummer, but, he's very humble. And then it was also through sitting in the gallery one day, just doing work, doing admin, whatever I was doing in the gallery, which I was running at the time. And this guy wandered in and said, I've just moved to Manchester, I need some work. And that was Mike. And I said, oh, it's lovely to meet you. I'd really like you to come and work here, but we haven't got any money, so you have to do it voluntarily. So
Yes.
he came to work for us voluntarily, and then it transpired he wanted to be in a band and he was going to write songs. And we did. And he did. He wrote songs. I was listening to him saying the other day that about the singing, that none of us really thought we were any good at singing. I mean, I've always sung because I've always school choir, college choir, things like that. I've run little singing groups, but I'm not a singer by any means, unlike two of my other three sisters who are fantastic singers. But I liked Mike's comment about none of us could really do it, so we all did it. And then obviously he's just such a performer that and
so the beginning of the band, were you and Mike in the gallery?
Yes, we would have been. Mm-hmm.
And then you thought, right, we've got this like the Magnificent Seven, or the return of. You then need the drummer and then a guitarist as well.
Yes.
Or
yeah.
Yes. So were you kind of happy thinking, yes, I've got the bass, you've got this singer, you can write the songs and guitar.
Yeah.
We'll think about who's the singer later. Was it just that kind of nucleus? And were you kind of excited? Did you think, because the 80s is kind of a time of a huge amount of bands. Did you just think we need to be in a band? I can't imagine people doing that now so much, thinking this is a really good idea for my debt.
I know. I think it wasn't so much about, I don't know if it was so much about being in a band. I didn't have a kind of vision of where I was going to get. Well, I did later on, and we didn't, if that makes sense. But I think I just wanted to play, and then we all played, and then we started to perform, and then it was like, oh, this is quite good fun. So we carried on, and we got some recognition, so we carried on more. So it was less for me at that time of, I want to be a big star. I've never wanted to be a big star, which is just as well. I just want to play the bass, and I really liked the sound of it, and I liked the songs, and we had a lot of fun.
Yes. And just kind of there in your first rehearsal, did you have, at that stage, did you also have Howard and Martin as well?
Yeah. Yes. So the four of us. I don't actually remember the very beginning of the first time we got together. I can't really quite remember that. But my husband and I were living in the cottage in Castlefield. You're in Norwich, did you say?
Yes.
Yes. Well, people who live in Manchester might know Castlefield, and there's a lockkeeper's cottage down there. And we were lucky enough to have come across somebody who was wanting to rent it out. And we rented it, and there was nothing else in Castlefield at the time. It's very built up now. So we rehearsed in our front room, and we could make as much noise as we wanted because there was nobody else there. So to begin with, that's what we did. And I don't actually remember the first rehearsal. But when we had our initial get-together after 34 years, just the other weekend, and we were down at Mike's studio in Borth in Wales, and we all were sort of milling around, and Mike sat on the stool and he just started playing one of the songs, and we all shambled in and shuffled in and just started to play together. And so I don't know if it was like that before.
Yes.
Here's a song. What should the bass line sound like? Well, I'll just play along and try and work out what the bass line should sound like.
It's always a curious thing. How does the band? Because you definitely create a sound of the band, don't you? It's quite distinctive as well. And then did you then after a few rehearsals think, okay, this might be a band? Then when does the name appear? Did you and which are the ones that you rejected?
Oh, I can't remember what we rejected. Martin might remember this because I think it might have been Martin that came up with The Man from Delmonte. The advert was around at the time, but it was just a catchy name. It was a good name.
It was a very good name, actually.
Yeah.
It worked really well, sort of, and then when I, recently had to sort of watch some of those adverts and think, oh, this is so strange.
It's funny. I was telling somebody that didn't know about the band. I was mentioning something before, and they hadn't quite heard what I'd said. And they said, "Did you say something about pineapples?" And I didn't say anything about pineapples, but in their head, it's obviously gone Delmonte, pineapples. Is that what the band was called? You know, quite a bizarre kind of like route through to the wrong.
Yes. And I guess you would have played live before going into any studio. Did you
Yeah.
sort of all enjoy the live experience? And was that all at the International, by the way?
No, I remember in my memory, our first performance was for friends at the Castlefield Gallery. So there was a lovely room on the ground floor, and we set up there, and we invited 30 people probably to come along. And I can remember at the end of that thinking, wow, that is not what I thought was going to happen. Because Mike in rehearsal, he's very laid back, and he's quite, you know, he's a very gentle man. And when he's performing, he just went, just this persona. I don't know. Well, I've seen him perform in the last few years with his other stuff, and he's still got a persona. But it was like, you'd rehearse stuff, and then it would slightly change when it was being performed, because it was like usually twice as fast and just a bit crazy.
Yes, which is, you know, not a bad thing really for if you're going to start to capture the audience. I mean, to be honest, looking at the pictures of the band, you do all look very young and hip, don't you? As if you've sort of quite the sort of fashion conscious kind of hipsters about town, which is kind of a combination of, I don't know, Beatnik and Betty Blue and sort of artiness. It's all there, isn't it?
Well, I think so, but in for me anyway, completely unintentional. It was just what we dressed like. That is, apart from the hat. The hat was, well, I did have the hat. I didn't buy it for the band. There's a particular hat I'm wearing in some of the photos. But we just, I suppose we were in an arty world. And if you're living in a slightly arty world, that's what you're used to seeing. So that's how you dress, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And we were being very influenced by our French. I guess you would have been going to those art cinemas, watching the latest films by, you know, various, I don't know if Wings of Desire had come out by then, but we had seen probably Razorhead and Betty Blue and Rosalind and the Lions, and I don't know, True Stories had probably happened as well, those late night cinema moments. So there was a certain, coolness with being an alternative person. So then when did you get into the studio? Was that to do, was your first single Water in My Eyes, by the way? Or was it Drive, Drive, Drive?
It was Drive, Drive, Drive. I do remember that. I'll tell you why I remember that. I think I remember that. I'm not good on the kind of like historical facts. There's a guy on the Facebook group called Danny Ibison, who is amazing at archive. He's archived so much, and he's got all this information. And actually, if you interviewed him, he'd know all the answers.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure it was Drive, 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 because I remember the cover very well. And the cover is very beautiful for Drive, Drive, Drive. And I remember having my son in London walking through a tunnel, pushing Jack in a buggy, and somebody behind me singing, "I want to dance, 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 lose you in the dark," and thinking, "Oh, that's the man from Monte." And I had to stop and say to her, "I'm in that band." And she probably thought I was completely nuts. But that seemed random to me. Somebody in the middle of London singing a Delmonte song.
A Delmonte? I don't. Did John Peel pick up on the band? Did he give them?
No,
or Janice Long?
No, I think they thought we weren't cool. I think they thought we were a bit silly. Maybe not silly might not be the right word, but you know, we don't have that thing that the other Manchester bands had at that time. We were an antithesis to that Manc swagger thing. That is just not what we're like.
Right.
No,
yes.
and I think John Peel. I did write to him once, and he wrote. I can't really remember what he said, but he did write back, and he said, I think he might have said something like, "I think Malcolm Delmonte might be better on Radio 2," which is not very cool. Or Radio 4, he might have said. That's more cool.
Oh, that's a bit mean, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
It was, because Manchester at that stage, I mean, obviously, you had the, 83 to 87, the Smiths, and then they broke up. It was a JFK moment. And then another, the next wave of indie bands come along, or alternative, and the next wave of 16-year-olds come along, and they kind of want to discover their bands. But then Ecstasy appeared, and then the dance scene, and then you had the bands like, the Happy Mondays had moved over to more of a dance scene, and then you had a guy called Gerald with his kind of... techno dance stuff, and then you had the Soup Dragons, and then there was the Stone Roses. So musically things were starting to change quite a lot. At that stage, were you conscious of that, or did you think, look, we're just going to stick with what we're doing? And
well, I was just being busy being a mum at that point, so I think we don't know if people in the band were conscious of it, but we never wrote what we thought the audience wanted to hear. As far as I know, we wrote what we wanted to write. We played what we wanted to play. So I mean, I think.
And can you remember when you first had started to come out of Manchester, playing live with the band? Can you remember those dates or some of those occasions?
I can remember some occasions. I can remember walking into smoky clubs with sticky, beer smelly carpets, thinking, oh, it's 3:00 and we've got to sound check and we've got to hang around until it's time to play at 10:00 at night.
Yes, this is it.
Not very glamorous. It's not glamorous, But I don't remember actual dates or places, but we did play.
Because there's quite a circuit, isn't there? During that period, there were, every town and city had their alternative indie night, and it was quite lucky because it meant that, you just had to go to that venue and that person and say, look, we can be available on Tuesday night in the middle of winter.
I'm pretty sure we played Aberdeen once, actually, which is because I remember going to the beach. I always liked to go to the beach if we were anywhere by the sea, and I'm pretty sure we played Aberdeen, which is a hell of a long way from Manchester. So I don't think we played any further south than London, but...
Yes, did you come to Norwich then?
Don't think so.
I just can't remember, actually.
I don't remember playing Norwich, because that's a really long way, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but there's definitely... Yeah, you might not have known.
No, Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham, Dudley. I remember playing Dudley.
Yes.
I remember that one because I was sick. I was actually not well. So I remember being on stage thinking, I'm going to be sick.
And then you were. Oh, dear.
I wasn't on the stage, thank goodness. I think on the way home.
I know. Well, I always remember a story that Suzanne Vega had when she'd done the first album or two and then went on tour with a small child and was going around Europe and just saying it was just a horrendous experience, trying to find a plug socket that, that fitted in sort of for the milk, and having this baby being sick and every, it just was a horrible, it just didn't, it was not an easy experience for anybody. And I think trauma.
I think it's a very difficult thing. And for a woman, and I think that's still not, it's inevitable, but if you are the mum, you are the one that often that child wants. And I think my husband was fantastic, but I think it was really hard on him sometimes being left with the baby, and sometimes I would take Jack, and we'd take someone. Katrina Ross used to come with us and look after Jack. She was Mike's girlfriend at the time, or afterwards or something. But anyway, we'd take people to help. And I can remember handing Jack to my friend Colin backstage at the Town and Country Club in London. We had to go on stage and Jack's like yelling. And I just had to go, here's the baby. I have to go on stage now. It's horrible. It's really hard.
God, yes, that is not going to be the easiest thing in the world to focus, is it? And get into being on stage with fans and stuff like that. So once you...
Sorry, can I just say, having said that, when Mike moved to America and he and Katie had 4 kids and they used to tour with the kids, but there was a folk music circuit, and I think that was maybe different. And maybe it being in America, it was different. But they used to take the kids and they'd like be on the stage with them sometimes when they were performing. And they're all performers now, the kids.
Yes, that's true, isn't it? They're all in bands and stuff. I know, it's just... it's God, you couldn't do that when you were still in your 50s, but you just about do it in your 20s, couldn't you? having children on stage with you. Yes. So then as the band progressed, I mean, you were on Ugly Man Records, and then you did Water in My Eye, and then Will Nobody Save Louise, which is your the famous song, actually, isn't it? The one that is the most popular.
I suppose it is. I don't think it's our best song. It's not my favourite, but it had the wonderful Roxy Walsh playing trombone on Will Nobody Save Louise. So, yeah, it's good. Water in My Eyes is quite a famous one as well, isn't it?
Yes.
I remember going to Southport to film the video for that. That's quite hilarious, that video, actually, if you ever get a chance to see that. And Southport, and there's a fairground and a beach and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
A bit anarchic.
Yeah. And as that period was going, did you, because you never quite release an album, do you?
Is it all that? I think it's all live recordings that are released. We never went into the studio to make an album. That's probably money. I don't really remember, but we didn't have the money to go in and do that. But,
and at that stage, you'd built up quite a indie following, though, hadn't you?
Yes, we had really good audiences, and they were fantastic, wonderful people. But I mean, I don't know how the finances work. How do you get in the studio to make an album?
No, it is a mission. The whole record industry is a bit of a murky moment, isn't it? Which has still left a few people traumatized by what they signed and how little money they got from it. But I think it's, you get that advance and then you go into a studio, but you don't realise, I think with some bands, that that's all going to cost money, and the PR is going to cost a few money and all the accommodation. And suddenly, I think for some people, it's like, oh, here's $1 million. And then, oh, by the way, you've now just clocked up a £2 million bill, so you now owe us $1 million. We sort of own your music. And it's all a little bit like, oh, when you're 22.
Well, it's all a bit shit, really. Why isn't everybody just a bit nicer? I do remember recording, it might have been Drive, and we recorded in a studio out of the blue, I think, in Manchester. And we had to record, one thing I remember recording overnight, because it was cheaper in the studio overnight. Now, I don't like being up all night. So that's quite a hard memory.
Yes. Well, I know, yes, again, that was one of the things that a lot of indie bands, and definitely you couldn't go to work in the morning. It was like, okay, I've got the keys, so we can sort of go in when no one's about, and we'll have to be out at 7 a.m, but it's going to be very cheap or very free, so let's just go and do it. But yes, when you're young and have no day job, it's all okay, isn't it?
That's right. Yes.
So as the 80s then progressed through, how was were you? It sounds like you were all very committed and happy with each other. There wasn't any creative differences or any issues with the bands?
No, I don't think there was. I think we liked each other as people. And we just got on with it, really. I don't remember anything nasty ever happening, really.
Yes, because then you go from Ugly Man Records to Bop Cassettes, don't you?
Yeah.
To record, is it Monday Morning? And then Big Noise and My Love Is Like a Gift You Can't Return. So that's kind of, yes, because most bands, indie bands, have a 5-year narrative of, 12-month honeymoon period. Rehearsals, single, possibly a John Peel session, album, possibly a second album, and then it gets a bit murky if there's a third one.
Right.
But yeah, so at this stage, it's all going well. So then what happens during that period of, 89 with the band?
89 was quite a busy year, as far as I remember, because in 89 later in 89, I was expecting our second child. So I just remember working quite a lot. I can remember being quite pregnant, still cycling my bike to get to rehearsals and go and play and stuff like that. I can't tell you where or what exactly, but yeah, we were working a lot in 1989.
Yes.
I mean, I remember Bop Cassettes was Ian Runnakers, who still plays, has Dislocation Dance. It's his big thing, plays in Dislocation Dance. Yeah. So, sorry.
And then, so is there a moment then with the band that, to quote Jim Morrison, it's the end, so to speak? Do you sort of have a definite moment, or does it just putter out?
Well, this is another funny thing, because I do remember when that gig at the International, that big gig at International 2, which is filmed. I can't remember who filmed that. It's obvious, somebody will know. Anyway, that where I'm pregnant on a big white dress on that, and that was my last gig with the band. But the band carried on doing stuff, and we'd got this guy Anthony Eagle, who was a jazz double bass player. He came in, we met him. He came in to be my maternity cover, and I can remember saying to him, "Oh, it's only maternity cover. I'm coming back." So I can't quite remember why I didn't come. Well, there was another gig that I sang at. In the International, I think, where in 1990 that would have been. And
Right.
I didn't play, but I sang. And there's another one where there's an HMV film. These are things that people have put up on Facebook that I'd forgotten about. An HMV record promotion thing. And I'm there, but I have a small child with me. So that must have been 1990 as well.
Blimey.
And then I don't know why the band quite fizzled out. I think... it's interesting, and I must ask the others when I see them in a few
Yes, what happened in 1990? Just yes.
Well,
Then by then you've got 2 children,
yes,
and
too hard
a
for
life
me.
a life in an indie band from the 80s.
Yeah, it would have been too hard for me because you're not making enough money to actually help with the you've got a house, you've got kids, you're trying to make a living, not making enough money to make that happen.
Yes, this is true. There was, I mean, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Really, you just need you need a grant really to be in a band at that stage. I should have
started younger. I should have started way before I had kids. Would have been easy.
This is true. But I mean, it sounds fantastic. Then when that's over, then do you then go back to your other career or start another career?
Well, what I did at that point was I was off looking after. I didn't work when the little one was until she went to nursery at 3. But Mike had started a new band called Surfurbia, and he wanted me to be in a new band with him, which was great, and I really enjoyed that. That was really good fun. Different music. I don't know if you've heard any of that. It's sort of more laid back. It's not as recognisable as Delmonte stuff. But I did enjoy playing with that band.
Yes.
And then after that fizzled out, Mike was going to go to America, and I got a job in a school because it fitted in with the kids. And that was the beginning of me working. I've worked in schools ever since, just sort of worked my way into teaching a bit of music, and that's what I've done. I teach music and gardening and a sort of a bit of therapeutic type of care of children. Well, using gardening as therapy and using music as therapy without being a trained therapist. So, a bit of that.
Yes. I was just having a look at your other band that you're in.
Surfurbia.
I'll have to check it. So that's with you, Curtis, and a guy called Mark.
Yeah, and then a guy called Ray Brophy playing guitar. He was a lovely guitar player.
Yes. Did you record this? Were you on this one kind of single EP they did with Turquoise Records?
I don't remember Turquoise. What's the name of the song that you're looking at?
There was Invisible, Amnesia, Crazy, and Neighborhood. Yeah,
that's right. And Neighborhood is going to be played by Delmonte at our gig. We've incorporated that. But the other ones are not because they're just a different vibe, I think.
Yes, blimey. You've still got your bass guitar. Well, still playing bass on there. This is excellent.
Yeah.
My God. And then just, I mean, the artwork, I mean, there's a lot of bands have a very distinctive kind of logo, don't they?
Yeah.
From the prog rock giants of Yes to Cud and Mega City 4. You also were brilliant in getting this fantastic kind of image for the band. Who and where did that come from?
The leopard.
Yes.
Leopard. Now, I was asking Peter's my husband, and he said something about the leopard, and he didn't design the leopard. He'd taken it from something, but I don't remember where he got it. But he probably did the writing. He did a lot. I think he probably did all our covers, or certainly most of our covers. And I remember Mike making the backdrop in one of the studios, one of the rehearsal spaces we had somewhere in deepest, darkest Manchester at that time. And I don't know how he did it because it was fantastic, that backdrop. And sadly, we either lost it or it got nicked or something, but we don't have it anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. But the leopard was a great thing, isn't it?
It's very good. And I guess the font for the man from Delmonte as well, is, it's consistently there, and it's so indie. A bit like a lot of the bands from Sarah Records. It's got a style, isn't it, really? It's not going to be death metal, is it, or prog rock? It's going to be indie pop.
It's going to be a little bit silly.
Yes, it's going to be jingly jangly. It's nice. So then as you were trundling and trucking through life, a bit like one of those Hollywood films, when does the sort of the call come for the reform? Because I guess you didn't think too much about the band. You didn't every Christmas go, oh, I'm just going to, do you know I'm in a band, and put on the record and everyone goes, oh no, she's doing that again.
Not. And one time during lockdown, I thought about the band because I was still teaching a bit during lockdown, and we had it was a nice time for me as a sort of teacher because we had small groups, and I did a lot of gardening with the kids, and we did some cooking from the things we'd grown in the garden and all those things that school, I think, should be incorporating all the time. And I was doing music with them, and so I made a little video about the man from Delmonte, and I played it to some of the kids. And then I felt like I can't do that again because that's just blowing my own trumpet. But quite interesting for them to see. And I might do it again when I go back. I've been off with this injury, but I might do it again when I go back to work, just to say, look, this is what it was like in the 80s. And this is quite interesting for you to see, perhaps, as a historical thing. And I've forgotten the question again. Sorry.
The kind of the memory of the band, and then this kind of moment it all happens.
Yeah. Occasionally somebody would say, do you think the band would ever get together? And I'd go, oh, I don't really think so. I think that's not very likely. And then I don't go on Facebook very much, but I happened to be on Facebook one day, and there was a message from this guy, Ian Lee, who said something like, do you think you would be at all interested in doing a Man from Delmonte reunion if the others said yes? And I'm pretty sure I'd have said, well, yeah, I would if the others would, but I don't think they will. And that was what every one of us said, apparently. So then it was like, oh, well, you've all said you will if the others will. And I know for a fact that Mike was bolstered ahead to get involved with this from his children, who are in the support band for Band on the Wall, Sadie and Julian, who wanted Mike to do the Delmonte stuff. And Julian had been listening. He's a drummer, and he can play all the drum parts. So he just wanted the man from Delmonte to get back together. This is Julian. This is Mike's kid, Julian.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we were all a bit like, oh, what do you think? I mean, I'd kept in touch with Mike and Howard, actually. I hadn't seen Martin for years because he moved up to Glasgow. But Mike used to bring his kids when they were touring in Britain, and they'd come and stay with us sometimes. So I'd always kept up with him.
Amazing.
And we all got to chat about it, and then it was like, well, shall we give it a go? And the first rehearsal weekend was a bit like, oh God, what's it going to be like? And it was just brilliant. It was just like we slotted right back in and just started playing. It was so nice.
Yes. So was that the rehearsal in the autumn?
Yes, it was before Christmas. So it must have been, I can't remember, November.
And was that the first time the four of you had seen each other for nearly 30 years? 35
34 years. I had seen Mike and I'd seen Howard because I kept in touch with them. I hadn't seen Martin, and I don't think the others had seen each other for 34 years, no. So it was quite bizarre, and you're kind of yourself, but just an older version.
Yes.
Older, wrinkly version with grey hair.
It is just amazing, isn't it? I know, it's just, I do love seeing some of the pictures and photographs people have put in on that Facebook page. And so especially if there's things like domestic scenes with kitchens that you forgot how kitchens looked, and then you don't, oh my God, and those baggy jumpers that we wore and big sort of, big boots from the Army and Navy, and it was just all there.
I still dress like that, actually. Big
yes. But it was just, I just loved those photographs I've seen. Yeah. So you had the rehearsal, but then did you say, oh, yes, but who will want to come and see us and where should we play live? I mean...
Well, that happened before the rehearsal, actually. The Ian Lee was saying, right, well, we're going to do this. And he was going to book a club called Night and Day in Manchester. But I don't like night. Well, it's a great venue, but I didn't think it was right for us. It's very long and thin. And I thought, if people are going to come and see us, they're going to want to see us. And it's a difficult place to see anybody. So I suggested Band on the Wall, which is, I really like that venue. And it's a bit bigger. It's got quite a better sort of access to the stage.
Yes.
So he went for that, and he went to book it, and it sold out in 20 minutes. And we were all like, oh my God. So in retrospect, we should have had a different venue that was bigger, but it's fine because we'll just play 2 gigs instead.
Yeah.
Playing Band on the Wall.
And then you've got some other dates as well around the country.
Yeah, we're going out to Horse and Bamboo. That was Paula Greenwood from something Records.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I should know this.
And then you also got, I can't remember either actually, but yeah, there's some, but then London as well.
And then another date in Manchester for the people who couldn't get Band on the Wall tickets. And then a date in London. I can't remember who's organised that, but obviously a London fan, because we never had a big following in London. So probably all the people from Manchester are coming down to London. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I would imagine there'll be such a curiosity. And sort of you've suddenly got CDs, T-shirts, the merch stand is looking good, isn't it?
Yeah. This, again, it's all Ian that's done all this.
The man's a trooper, isn't he? What a chap.
He's been amazing. Yes. Absolutely. None of this would have happened without him. No.
Yeah, you do need someone, don't you?
Yeah.
Just to have the baton and say, look, I'll sort out the bits you really don't want to think about.
Yeah, because we just have the luxury of just turning up and playing, practicing, turning up and playing. That's what we want to do.
And before those, have you got any more rehearsals booked before your first date?
Yeah, we're back in Wales in a couple of weeks to rehearse.
One
more weekend, and then depending on how that goes, I kind of squashed in one just before the gig, or not.
Yes, well, I guess. Does that mean that you're being busily getting your fingers all used to the strings again?
Yes, it is. It is. Well, yeah, just trying to get used to playing. I mean, I had carried on playing the bass, but it was a different kind of feel in that kind of music. And also I hurt my hand a bit when I fell off my bike, so I just get that back working properly. But Mike has carried on playing for it. Mike Martin. All of us have carried on playing in different ways. Yes.
I know Mike's got quite the discography, hasn't he? Discogs.
He certainly has. Some of his songs he did before Truck Stop Honeymoon and then with Truck Stop Honeymoon, they're just great. He's got hundreds of songs. Hundreds.
He's Mr. Creative, isn't he? Yes. Well, so that's going to be April the 25th in London, which is there. And then, have you been tempted? Because I know now you're all on vaguely the same island. Are you tempted to record any new material? Because obviously Mike's got a studio. Is there sort of ideas of getting a 4-track EP of new material?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that, but I have the feeling that everybody would be up for it if that was a thing to do. I could imagine. I would love to do that personally. I'd love to. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Mike's got in Wales. Yeah.
I know.
So if for anybody listening, if they've not got a ticket yet, come to Academy 2, April. I'm probably going to get the date wrong now. April the 12th. Can you check that?
Yeah, so yes, you are Manchester Academy 2, 12th of April, and then there's this other one. Yes, on Portland Street. So and then this one in London on the 25th of April. So April, you're going to have to stop falling off bikes, aren't you? Really?
Certainly. Well, the first gig is in about a month, isn't it? A month and a bit. Not very far away, but I should be all right by then.
Yeah, Yeah, God, that is brilliant. Well, look, I just think this is such a great story. And having been doing this show for quite a few years now, when I started, there wasn't that much interest in sort of indie bands from the 80s. And it was like, oh, yes, okay. But then in the last few years, you must have seen it yourself, is a lot of people are writing their memoirs, and there's been lots of documentary books that are coming out. There's been films about the most obscure bands, or even just one album, like the Wedding Present George Best album, bands that only lasted 8 months, like Rima Rima, that was 1979. But it's just, there's a real interest and curiosity with this decade now, which is the 80s. Because I think, because the narrative was slightly told by a few people, and it was all like, Spandau Ballet, The Blitz, Duran Duran, Sade, Live Aid, and that was it. And then it's like, there's all this other stuff that you think, hey, hang on, we weren't all just hanging out with Rusty Egan and some like New Romantics. Thank you.
Yeah,
so, yes.
Definitely. I think I'm wondering. Somebody said to me about when they'd heard that we were doing a reunion. They said people need a bit of nostalgia in these difficult times. The world is a very difficult place at the moment, isn't it? So maybe it's to do with us and our fans getting older and wanting to look back to youth and trying to remember how it felt to be, well, for them 16 and for us in our me in my 20s. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And also I think a lot of the music and bands, when you're in it at that age and you're just kind of consuming it and being obsessed with it, there's only so much you could listen to. And also we didn't have streaming platforms. So there was a lot of it, it passed by. And then you think, oh, I'll listen to some of these other bands. You think, God, this is really good. Or even bands that you remember. Actually, that's not so much the case. The bands that you really obsessed with, you kind of feel like, I love the Smiths, but I'm probably not going to listen to them anymore.
No.
Not because of various, lead singers, but just because it's like, I know it, but I'm being curious with all the artists and bands and albums that I missed. I think, oh God, I feel embarrassed. I shouldn't even admit that, like the Comsat Angels or the Chameleons. I thought I did miss them a bit, really.
But that with me, as I missed so much because I was just busy doing other things or, whatever I was doing. But it's so easy. I think what is fantastic now is it's so easy to search things and to find things and to get YouTube stuff and, to learn things from the internet, which is a fantastic tool and also a terrible thing. But
but I think with that world is that, you can, like you said, you can get that. And then it's that, you might like all these other bands or artists, and you kind of feel like, I'll give that a go because I haven't had to spend months searching for it and then spending money and thinking, oh my God, that's terrible. Why did I? Album of the week in the NME was often you'd guarantee it would be terrible, but the journalist thought it was the best thing ever. And I just spent £5 on that. Thank you.
I know. I could have done something else with that.
Yes, I know. Yeah. So, and I've just found it fascinating, some of this kind of German post-punk stuff that I didn't listen to, like Ex-Mar Deutschland. And the woman who was the lead singer, Anja Huve, I mean, she's just got a solo album out that came out last year and is thinking, after decades of not doing music, of potentially performing live. And I've been listening to that now a lot, and I've been thinking, I really like that, but I completely missed it first time, really.
But isn't it fabulous? I think what's fabulous is that that my generation, our generation, can come back and play whatever they want. You can play whatever you want. You don't have to go, oh, well, I'm this age now, better just play serious stuff. You can do what you want. And that playfulness, I think if I do more, I would like to do more music that I do myself. I tend to write, if I'm writing, I write for children. And I make stuff up all the time for children when I'm teaching. But to actually pin down something and let it be playful. You don't need to hark back to the Mozart. I don't need to hark back to the Mozart and the Beethoven that I learned as a child. As a teenager. You can do whatever because there's so much influence to be listened to, There's so many different things we listen to. It's very interesting. Tell you who I was listening to today on Radio 4 or 3 was Chris Addison. The actor Chris Addison from The Thick of It.
Yes.
And he's a bit of a Monte fan. But he's got a fantastic radio show, and he's just so knowledgeable and brings in this and that and the next thing. And he's going from William Byrd and Palestrina up to blah, something else. And, I love all that. That mixing, it's all just sound.
Yes. Well, I think that's why I like John Peel, because he used to sort of just, he had a, it wasn't just kind of indie pop. It was, Bulgarian folk, African music, reggae, extreme noise, terror. So it was all good. Do you think, because it was Jon Ronson, has he been not only tweeting or whatever they do now, are you expecting celebrities at some of these gigs,
I think John's flying over from America to open for it, not to open for us, but to introduce us at Band on the Wall. I have no idea why he would do that, but that's very nice. It would be nice. You might have seen him in years. I don't know about any other celebrities. If people come, that's lovely. I probably won't know who they are anyway, so it'd be fine. No, it's always very nice if people want to come and support you and back you up and say hello, and that's all lovely. And it would be lovely to see who's a very successful writer and whatever else he does. Yeah.
Well, it's a lovely kind of story. I mean, with the band, will you be in the next rehearsals talking about stage performance, lighting, gear, and sort of all that? Is it going to be like Prince and?
I suppose we'll have to. Yeah. The dry ice.
Have you still got the hat?
I have still got the hat. I think it's got a hole in it, but I think I have got the hat.
Right.
I'm not sure I want to wear the hat, but I might.
You could just reference it for the picture, couldn't you? I think that's the great thing. So
I could chuck it into the audience, and somebody would be very pleased to get it.
Yes, God, you could put it on eBay. At least get a $5. I don't know. You probably get more than $5, wouldn't you? I love the fact that there's people who've got such memorabilia that's still there. So it's there.
And actually,
yes.
When this all started, I did go up into our attic, and we've got so much artwork and bits and bobs of things. I photographed it all and sent it to Ian so that he could see what's there. But I mean, I think they digitally put things together anyway. But I've got the actual artwork from what to do with it.
God, you'd definitely put it in a museum, wouldn't you? God, that's good. Well, Well, definitely keep hold of it.
In terms of what's the lighting going to do, it never, ever occurred to me what's the lighting going to do. So I think that's somebody else's job.
Yeah.
The light, as long as the sound is good. We used to always take our own sound person with us, and I don't think the plan is to do that. But we'll have people out the front going, that bass isn't loud enough. The bass is never loud enough. So.
Oh, I think it's going to be magic. It's going to be so exciting, isn't it? Yes.
I hope so.
I know it will. It'll be just brilliant. It'll be just so lovely. It would be great if you could get one of a bit of a projection going on with bit of quality. I don't know if you've ever had this, but someone's just messaged me. I went to the sports park today to go swimming. This is exciting. And and I'm a cyclist as well. And this happens occasionally that you look at your bike and someone has put their lock through your bike as well.
Yes.
And I've just put a note, and I've been waiting all day, and they've gone, oh, I've just got in touch, and they've just got in touch with me, and to say they're there. So thank God for that. Anyway, sorry, I was a bit distracted with that. So I was just going to say about projection. It would be great to get some projection for for the band in the early years, as well as you on stage.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
That's an interesting idea. Well, I'll put that to Ian.
The crowd will go wild, won't they? Before you walk on stage to grey, to the ice and the strobe lighting before launching into your first number.
I'm really hoping the crowd might sing some of the girly backing vocals, which I'm not at all sure that I can still do. There's really high backing vocals, and I just think I need the crowd to sing along, please. So if you're listening.
Oh, look. Well, look, Sheila, thank you ever so much for this. This is amazing. And actually, if you want, I can send you the link, and then you can put it on that Facebook page that has been created for the band, because people will love it. And I hope that you probably get a few more dates in the summer and some live material, I'm sure, because it's, in a weird way, it's kind of probably easier to put stuff out there on Bandcamp and various other social,
Yeah.
I don't know, places.
It's it's different now, isn't it? It's different to how it was in the 80s when you couldn't, you had actual things, CDs or album. I've got some vinyl or bought cassettes, and now it's a bit more like, well, you can do this. I have no idea how you do it, but you can put it out on
somewhere down the line. I know. Well, look, so someone saved Louise as the favourite, isn't it? My love is like a gift. Drive, drive, water in my eyes, son. So, what's your favourite song, by the way?
Of the old songs, there's one called Mathematically Speaking that was a gentle song that I loved, and Like a Millionaire, which is quite a gentle one.
Ooh.
And of the new ones, there's one that Mike wrote. I mean, they're very gentle, the ones I like. Mike wrote this great song called Buddy Holly, and I just love that song. I just really love the way it rolls along, and it's got a lovely little hooky bit in the middle. So
it's funny you mentioned that, because I've been watching this documentary on Buddy Holly, and
all right.
Yeah, and he was only, I think it was only 18 months, but my God, his music was amazing. And his musical journey was quite interesting as well. I went from very snappy pop songs to almost becoming kind of quite orchestral in his last few months.
What's that? Where did you find that?
That was because it's, if you have the chance, Sky Arts, which is free now if you've got a Digibox, have these various documentaries on, and I go through each week to see what's on, and it's often one of those ones that they repeat stuff all the time. So there's the Buddy Holly story, but there's also this classic album series, and there's one on the Crickets, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. So if you get a chance, Sky Arts, it does have a lot of repetition, but sometimes you think, about once a week there's quite a good documentary.
Interesting.
And there you go.
Because talking about documentaries versus films, have you been, or are you going to see the Bob Dylan, what's it called, the new Bob Dylan film?
Yeah, I know. I'm not quite sure. So I love documentaries, but I'm not sure if I could do some sort of acting documentary. I sort of just would rather watch a documentary on Bob Dylan than this sort of person's idea and a story. So
that's right. Yeah. Well, I watched the trailer and I thought, I don't really know if I want to see that. And then I started looking up Bob Dylan early interviews. I was really shocked at some of the way that some people interviewed him in this kind of like, as if he was kind of some kind of reprobate, I don't know if you look at old interviews.
I love them.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're even worse if there's a woman being interviewed by a man. It's not good.
God, no.
It's a bit like, you feel like, oh God.
I know those days. Bleh.
Yeah, no. There is one particular woman called Mavis Nicholson, and she did an interview with David Bowie, which I just watched so much because she did this show in the afternoons. I didn't know her at the time, but she's got this amazing body of work, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And she asked the most interesting questions, and it was a period in his life where, it was still in the 70s, but it's really stunning. I'll have to send you the link, actually, because
please do, because I'll probably forget what you've just said.
Yes, no, I will. I love Mavis. I've never had a friend called Mavis, but I feel like she's the closest I've ever been. But Mavis Nicholson, I do. I just always, when I look at that, I think, God, that is an amazing interview. And so it was, I think in some of those things in the 70s, some people were just they were just very good. They were very long show. They wasn't like this, oh my God, we've got 2 minutes to be, snappy and let's have a joke about Britpop and how you got drunk once and threw up on someone. It was like they were very interested about exploring the creative process. But the one on Bowie was amazing, actually, some of his replies. If you get a chance, there was a film which is the Moon Age Daydream one. Did you see that at the...
No, I'm just going to get myself a pencil so I can write this down. Oh. Right, I've got one here. Moon Age Daydream.
Yeah, that came out 2 years ago. You can probably stream it somewhere down the line. Yeah, and that was quite interesting. It's a person who's a filmmaker, and so he's interpreting Bowie's creative process. So it's not the usual, let's have, Earl Slick and Mike Garson talking about their usual anecdotes. It's exploring Bowie's creative process and some brain.
Well, he was an incredible creative. Right up to, I thought he was amazing.
Black Star, yeah. I know, because in the 70s, I mean, he did release or record one album a year, did various world tours, relocated, got married, had a baby, produced other albums, appeared in films and a stage show in New York. So he did pack it in.
He did. And, sometimes you sort of think somebody like that, you think, God, what have I been doing all my life? I don't really know. Knitting.
Knitting. No, that's good. That's good. It's better than scrolling on your social media platform sites. And on that bombshell, that is basically the end of the interview. A massive thank you to Sheila for giving me the time for that interview, just talking about her life in music, arts, and much, much more. And also she'd, just fallen off her bike and had had fractured, I believe, her jaw. So hopefully we'll be fighting fit for February. So, yes, all the best for that. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. So if you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just do C86 Show. All these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.